Okay, so let's make you a 5-minute expert on exposure. So firstly, the context. Wilfred Owen was very outspoken about the futility of war. Now, the futility means pointlessness. So he saw propaganda spreading that the war was glorious and heroic, and he thought that was quite untruthful and wanted to expose the reality. So one of Wilfred Owen's most famous poems ends with the line, "The old lie, dulce et decorum est pro patria mori," which translated from Latin is "the old lie, it's sweet and fitting to die for one's country." So in exposure, he's actually recounting a time that he was sent to spy, sent to observe, and they weren't in trenches. They were asked to just go and lie out in the snow and report back on what they saw. So there was no glory in this. There were no heroic medals, nothing like that. They were literally just told to lie out in the snow, and people passed away. So there was one person who passed on this mission, but Owen sort of talks about this in a different way. He talks about it as though they have many, many casualties, because they could have. To be fair, he said they were really struggling with the thirst. They only had these tiny little cookers to try and defrost their water, and they were struggling in terms of wondering if they were ever going to be able to even go back to war, let alone ever go home. It seemed like they were on a mission where they would all pass because of the terrible conditions at war. Now, for him, this just all proved that war was not as glorious as people made it out to be. So, a few key quotes: "Dawn massing in the east, her melancholy army, but nothing happens. Far off, like a dull rumour of another war, and the innocent mice rejoice, the house is theirs. Is it that we are dying?" So a few of these. The weather is personified as a destructive force. The soldiers were fighting, but they weren't fighting in a battle. They were fighting the weather. And it kind of shows how inescapable war is, because they weren't able to fight in the traditional way. They were just out fighting in poor conditions. So really, the soldiers got no let up. They got no break. And then we've got the word massing as well, which emphasizes the extreme power of nature here. So we've got "but nothing happens," which is a refrain. A refrain is a repeated line in a poem. It keeps emphasizing the futility of war, because what we see is we constantly go through this poem where these men suffer and they pass away, and they are struggling throughout the entire poem, but nothing happens. And what that means is wars aren't won. No one wins anything. There are no medals being won, nothing. Nothing happens. Their deaths and the deaths of these soldiers means nothing. Then we move on to "far off, like a dull rumour of some other war." So this simile is showing that there is fighting in the distance. So it's really haunting, because people would assume that you would feel safe because you are away from that war zone, but actually they could never really escape the war zone, because they just moved into a place with terrible conditions. We know that the war zone is close, though, because we've got lines like "sudden successive flights of bullets streak the silence," because they can never escape war. So even though they are sent on a relatively safe mission, if it wasn't snowing, they're never able to escape the realities of war. I love this comparison to the mice as well. So the comparison between the soldiers thinking of home and the mice who actually are at home, rejoicing because they are the owners of the house, they have the house now, shows that actually soldiers weren't treated as any better than vermin. Is it that we are dying as well? Very good rhetorical question. It shows how confused they are. So it's very confusing. It's taking this mental toll on them. They don't understand what's really going on, and they're not coherent enough to know whether they are going to live or die at this point in time. If you want to get some structure points as well, the poem is a narrative, so it's very story-like, with a repeated refrain that shows the futility of war. It's written in para-rhyme. Owen uses this a lot in his poems. So we've got silent and salient, for example, and the half-rhyme is there to show something isn't right. So the same way he thinks of war as corrupt, he's kind of corrupted the rhyme scheme of his poem. So that's just under 5 minutes. You have become a 5-minute expert on exposure. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and watch the other videos. Thank you.